Edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to talk about Cairo's announcement of the launch of a partnership with the United States to promote the climate change adaptation in the African continent. First, we'll start with this report where Cairo announced on the Egyptian-EU partnership on a number of initiatives on adaptation to climate change in Africa throughout the year. Cairo said the partnership comes as a contribution to building trust and creating favorable conditions to address this global phenomenon. More details with Samah Sharif.
While addressing the Major Economies Forum on Energy and Climate Change Conference, El-Sisi announced an Egyptian-US partnership on a number of initiatives on adaptation to climate change in Africa throughout the year. He said the partnership comes as a contribution to building trust and creating favorable conditions to address the global phenomena. The conference was held virtually under the auspices of US President Joe Biden and included the participation of a number of heads of state and government, as well as the UN Secretary General. El-Sisi said the Egyptian-US partnership targets launching a new effective initiative to support climate adaptation efforts in Africa during the upcoming UN Conference of Parties on Climate Change COP27 that will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh this November. Egypt has vowed to speak for African interests in combating climate change at COP27. El-Sisi also announced via the event that Egypt has joined the Global Methane Pledge initiative to enhance its efforts in reducing methane emissions from the petroleum and natural gas sectors in cooperation with international partners in these sectors. Established by the US in 2009, the Major Economies Forum on Energy and Climate Change Conference aims to support issues on combating climate change and rally the necessary international momentum. El-Sisi said the international community's ability to move forward towards implementing commitments and pledges in alignment with the Paris Agreement depends on the level of trust among all countries and on all conditions that stimulate and support more constructive action to face climate change. He urged that the priorities of developing countries, especially in Africa, be addressed and taken into consideration, stressing that these countries should feel that they bear their responsibilities to the best of their abilities and to the extent of appropriate support and funding available to them.
To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Diaa Qousy, our international climate expert. Dr. Diaa, good afternoon to you, sir. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Diaa.
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you and to the listeners.
Dr. Diaa, Cairo announced an Egyptian-US partnership on a number of initiatives on an adaptation to climate change in Africa throughout the year. How do you see this move?
Well, it's actually very important because all these African countries plus some other Asian developing countries, they are very much affected by the climate change, while all these countries and nations, their influence on the submission of warming gases, the contribution of all these countries is very small actually. While the biggest countries in the world like US, China, India, the European Union, Russia, etc., they consume a lot of fossil fuel, and they are the cause of all these emissions of greenhouse gases, and they actually do not offer the appropriate assistance, whether it is technical or financial or whatever, to all these African countries.
Yeah.
And therefore, this type of partnership between Egypt and the US is very important for all African countries in particular, because Egypt can actually send the experts to these countries, advising them on what type of adaptation measures they should be taking, and the U.S. will either be financing all these activities or at least advising other countries in the Sharm el-Sheikh conference, which will be held late this year, advise all European, Chinese, Indian, and other countries to share the financial and technical assistance to these countries.
Yeah.
So this partnership, in my opinion, is very important.
Indeed. Sir, Cairo actually has vowed to speak for African interest in combating climate change at the COP27, which will be held in November in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. What issues do you expect to feature high on Cairo's agenda during the upcoming COP27 conference?
I believe that the COP27 will be a very good platform to all African countries to come and share with the world their own experience with this phenomena.
Yeah.
Because this phenomena is universal. It's a global phenomena. Africa is not only part of the phenomena, but it is the poorest part, number one, the lowest contribution of fossil fuel to the international quota in a way, and in the meantime, don't forget that almost the coastal line between the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans of Africa is on this coastal line between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean from the northern side and from the Atlantic on the other side. It's all sort of subject to what we call sea level rise from one side.
Yes.
Number two, the continent is subject to all kinds of higher temperatures and lower precipitation. Number three, the continent is subject to all kinds of extreme events, which includes all kinds of floods, landslides, you name it.
Yes. Indeed. Actually, Sir, President Sisi said that the international community's ability to move forward towards implementing the commitments and pledges in alignment with the Paris Agreement depends on the level of trust among the countries. How do you read the statement by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, sir?
Well, the statement is very well written, and I'm sure it's very well received, because it's it contains what actually the problem is. The problem is we people here are not influencing the climate, the world, the international climate, because we are not one of the reasons or one of the contributors of the consumption of fossil fuels. Our consumption is very low compared to others. In the meantime, we are the people who are going to be hurt and hit hard by the phenomena. So the statement is very straightforward. We are not the reason for the phenomena, but we are going to be affected more. So people come and help us.
Yeah. Dr. Diaa, how do you expect the priorities of developing countries, especially in Africa, to be addressed at the COP27 summit?
Well, obviously, Africa has not afford to spend all these sums of deficit
Yes.
on the adaptation to climate change. We do not have the facilities, we do not have the means, we do not have the money to combat all these effects that are going to happen due to climate change. And this brings actually Africa to the front sort of lines of the world to tell everybody that we are not capable, we cannot do it, and we are going to be affected more by this phenomena.
Yes.
Please come and help us. You are the reason. You are the reason behind all these emissions. You are the reason behind all these changes in temperatures and sea level rise, etc., etc. We are going to be affected by all these sort of difficulties. So please, if you have sort of ethical and moral behavior, come and help us. We cannot this, we cannot stand it.
Yes. Dr. Diaa, how do you expect the agreement over funding to African states to deal with the repercussions of the climate change to be?
We heard from in COP16, which was Paris in 2015, I believe, and also in COP26 in Scotland. There was some sort of promises with an establishment of 1 billion, no, sorry, 100 billion US dollars as an adaptation fund for the developing countries to use to combat and sort of the effects of climate change. However, promises are one, and keeping these promises is another thing. And of course, that in the COP26, I'm sure that most of the African countries, and in particular, and the developing countries in general, talking here about Russia, I'm talking about Pakistan, and I'm talking here about Thailand, that all these also by climate change. And that for all these developing countries will be standing together in terms and setting the way to not stop, please try to help us. Support,
indeed.
In our situation, our adaptation plan for 2050 calls for expenditure of or 130 billion Egyptian pounds. The Egyptian budget has to spend all this money on particular issue because we have more of budget to spend on. So it's only one example. Sure, every country is becoming with this. Example, the Sheikh conference.
Yes, Dr. Diaa Qousy, our international climate expert, thank you very much for your precious input and for being with us. And indeed, Cairo will launch on Monday the 7th edition of the Builders of the Egypt Forum. The event is to discuss the Arab and African integration in implementing comprehensive development strategies amid the global challenges. More details in the following story by Samah al-Sharif.